everyone, and welcome to the 2021 year. Today I'm going to be talking about the best books that I read in 2020, aka like some of my new all-time favorite books in the entire world. But before I get into that, I just want to thank today's sponsor, Book of the Month. Book of the Month is a monthly book service that promotes new and emerging authors. Every month they curate diverse new and early releases in genres like thriller, romance, fantasy, and more. While the subscription is monthly, you can skip any months if you do not find any titles that interest you during any given month. The first option is The Dating Plan, a story about a hilarious fake dating plan between a software engineer and a venture capitalist. Sparks fly when Daisy and Liam go on a series of dates to legitimize their fake relationship, but too late, they realize that very little is convenient about their arrangement. Next, we have The Prophets, a singular and stunning debut novel about the forbidden union between two enslaved young men on a deep South plantation, the refuge they find in each other, and the betrayal that threatens their existence. The Removed is a novel about a fractured family reckoning with the tragic death of their son long ago. Drawing deeply on Cherokee folklore, this book seamlessly blends the real and spiritual, showing the power of stories on both a personal and ancestral level. The next book is The Survivors. Kieran's life changed forever on the day a reckless mistake led to devastating consequences. The guilt that still haunts him resurfaces during a visit with his young family to the small coastal community he once called home. When a body is discovered on the beach, long-held secrets threaten to emerge. Last but not least, we have Outlawed. Featuring an irresistible, no-nonsense, courageous, and determined heroine, this story dusts off the myth of the Old West and reignites the glimmering promise of the frontier with an entirely new set of feminist stakes. That wraps up all the January choices. If you're interested in any of them, use the code NEWBOOKS to get your first book for $9.99. I'll also have a link in my description for you to use to head over to the Book of the Month website. Now let's get back to the regularly scheduled program. So it's no secret that a lot of the books that I read in 2020 were phenomenal, chef's kiss, because I have not stopped talking about them every single chance I get. But I thought it would be really cool to still do a favorites of 2020 or best books I read in 2020 list, because there are a couple on here that I feel like I haven't really talked about that much, and I just feel like everybody needs to hear about these books, so we're gonna talk about them. Okay. So in 2020 I switched over to tracking my reading on Excel and Book Sloth, and I'm considering, I think it's Storygraph. A lot of people have been telling me about that website too, and I'm considering it, but I've been really loving using Book Sloth and Excel. And I looked at my Excel the other day and was super shocked to see that I had read over 100 books. I don't know how many I will complete in the next, 24 hours, because I'm filming this literally right before New Year's. So love that for me, but the number will be right here somewhere, the number of books that I ended up completing. But I was really shocked and really grateful and really like queen status about the fact that I read this many books, because this year has just been a roller coaster for many reasons, including how the world is looking right now. So I spent a majority of my time being in reading slumps for like days, sometimes even weeks, and then reading like 5 books in 2 days, which was a choice, but you know, it got us to where we are now, so that's all that matters. I did it, that's all that matters. And now we're going to talk about these books. The first book that I'm going to talk about will shock absolutely nobody in this entire world, because it is Radio Silence. Okay, Radio Silence follows our main character Frances, who is a high school senior, and she's trying to figure out what to do with her life, what to do with the future. She doesn't really know. She wants to go to college. She doesn't know what to do with herself, because she's so used to being the perfect student, the perfect head girl at her school. And she meets our other main character, Alid, who is the host of a podcast. I don't really know how to describe Universe City, except I really wish it was a real thing. I know it's based off of something that is real, so perhaps I'll listen to that someday, but this book is absolutely amazing. I have never related to a character as much as I related to Alid last. He is just amazing. Like, so is Frances. Frances is just such a great character as well. I remember I was watching, I think I've mentioned this before, watching Alice Oseman talk about how they, figured out which characters to talk about first. And I just find it funny that Frances, I believe, was like the last character that Alice wrote. And I'm just like, Do you even know what your power is? Do you even know how amazing you are? This book is definitely the type of book that you should read if you are somebody who loves books about people trying to figure out what to do with their lives in the future, figure out what the meaning of life and friendship and love and the treasures. Like, if you're that type of person, you need to read Radio Silence. I don't know how many times I can say you need to read Radio Silence before I sound like a broken record, but you need to read a Radio Silence. It is just chef's kiss. The next book on my list is Becoming, which is a memoir by Michelle Obama. I cannot express how much I love this memoir. This was the first nonfiction book that I had read, and I just remember reading it and reading about Michelle's life and her experiences as a dark-skinned Black woman. I just feel like this is such an important book for everyone and anyone to read, because you really get to see from Michelle's lens how she became the person she is now. This book really just changed so much for me. I feel like Michelle was just this person who I saw as an extremely educated woman that I wanted to be like, and I just knew that she was just somebody who had been through so much. But then reading her actual experiences with my own eyes and knowing that, oh my gosh, this person has been through so much, especially the racism and anti-Blackness that she experienced while being the first lady and afterwards, it's just, it tore me to shreds. And I feel like this is the kind of book that everybody should read, whether or not you enjoy reading memoirs or you enjoy nonfiction. This is just such an amazing and phenomenal book. I was sobbing. Like, I cried probably like 5 or 6 times reading this book. It's just so amazing. You need to read it. So the next book on my list is The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I honestly, when I first read this book, I thought it was amazing. I thought it was fantastic. I thought it was really good. But then when I watched the movie, I was absolutely destroyed. This story is just one that is just, how do I explain it? It's earth-shattering. We follow our main character Charlie as he is writing letters to a friend, us, and we are seeing Charlie, you know, navigate high school, making friends, losing friends, having, you know, relationships, making mistakes, things like that. And I just feel like there's only one way to describe the story, and it is that it is the essence of adolescence. Does that make sense? Like, it's the essence of youth. This book perfectly captures what it feels like to be in a moment of life where people are just like walking by and passing by, and you're wondering, why am I the one person that is just here in this bubble of feeling and emotion, and people are just, you know, progressing, growing, changing, and I'm just here. This book is so much deeper than you think, because it's such a thin, small book that you think you're just going to read some cute thing where this guy is like writing letters to a friend. But no, it is so much more. This book is very heavy with the read between the lines aspect because there is abuse. This book is so heavy, okay? Like, when I tell you, I had to read multiple parts of this book over and over to read between the lines. And once I got it, I was like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And I just started out of nowhere crying because it was just so emotional and heavy. Like, I don't even know how to explain it. People who have read this book know what I'm talking about. And if you haven't read this book, I highly recommend that you do. This book is just amazing. Like, I can't even put it into words. At the very least, watch the movie, because I think the movie is like written or directed by the author. I feel like if an author is in charge of screenplay or like producing or directing, that probably means that the movie is going to be pretty close to the book. And in this case, it is. The next book on my list is The Henna Artist. This book follows our main character, who is married off as a teenager to a man who later on ends up abusing her, and so she runs away to a bigger town where she becomes a henna artist slash confidant slash matchmaker to richer families. And while she is, you know, living her life as an adult now, she's going through the experiences of trying to heal from her past and move forward and make a name for herself in this town that she has moved to. However, one day while she's doing things, her sister, who she didn't know existed, shows up at her door and is like, hey, I need somewhere to go. I need somewhere to be. Her sister ran away from their town because a lot of bad things are happening there. And so now our main character has found herself being the parental figure to a 13-year-old. I think her sister was 13 or 15. but teenager that she literally did not even know existed. And it is definitely interesting to see. I really love this book because I feel like a lot of things were discussed that I don't typically see being discussed in books that I'm reading, because I don't typically read historical fiction. And before reading this book, I hadn't really read that many literary fiction / historical fiction books. So there are a lot of discussions missing from things that I was reading. And oh my gosh, I'm telling you guys, before this book, I was so convinced that I didn't really like historical fiction. I was like, it's not for me. I don't think so. Absolutely not. But there's just something about reading historical fiction books by authors of color that just hits differently. The next book on my list is A Song of Rates and Ruin. So I feel like I should say that I don't typically enjoy fantasy books. Like, I like them, but they don't typically make any sort of like favorites list. I just read them and I'm like, oh, this is really good. But when I read A Song of Rates and Ruin, I felt like my mouth was on the floor. I loved it so much. I was amazed. I just couldn't believe what I was, reading, because immaculate. Before I get into like gushing and talking for whoever knows how long, let's talk about what this book is about. This book follows our two main characters, Karina and Malik. So Karina is a princess whose mother has just been assassinated, and Malik is a refugee whose sister has just been kidnapped by some evil creature. Because of these circumstances, both of them find themselves having to kill each other for reasons I won't say because of spoilers. But when I tell you that this book was such high stakes, like, I didn't realize how important having high stakes in a fantasy novel was until I read this, because the entire time you're like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, is he gonna do it? Is he gonna do it? Is she gonna do it? Is she gonna do it? Because they have to kill each other. Like, Karina has to marry one of the people who she does this competition for, and so because Malik is trying to kill Karina, he enters the competition, and she's like, and you're like, is she gonna kill Malik? But Malik also has to kill her. And it's just like intense. On top of that, we have the fact that this book's representation is just phenomenal. So this book has a lot of African representation in it, West African representation, and it was just so amazing. It was also so amazing to see a dark-skinned, plus-size main character as, Karina. And then we also have Malik, who's also dark-skinned. Like, just the representation, I can't even express how important and amazing it was, because also we got a lot of anxiety representation from Malik's character that was just done so well. Like, I just can't even, like, there was just so many little things in this book that I was like, how do you describe perfection? It's this book. It's this book. Because I just felt so connected to both Malik and Karina's characters, and I just felt like the writing, on top of everything else, the cleverness of the author, just blew me out of the water. Amazing and phenomenal. I just can't do it. Like, all I can say is this book was amazing, phenomenal, high stakes. Read it. Ironically enough, the next book on this list is also a fantasy, which is also a surprise, because this one has a couple tropes that I don't typically enjoy that much, but I did in this book, which has me thinking. But the book is There Will Come a Darkness. So this book is a fantasy that says a new prophet will come that will save the world from an age of darkness, while at the same time there will be a person who rises from darkness that will destroy the world. So it's kind of like the prophet has to go and stop the person who is going to bring the darkness into the world. One reason why I really, really loved this book was because I felt like the writing was so good. Typically when I read fantasy books that have so many characters, I find myself not really caring about certain people or forgetting about certain people's existence, or just being like, why does this character get a part? Like when you're reading a book with like multiple POVs and you want to skip someone's part so bad. I did not have that feeling at all with this book. Like, every single character made sense to me. Every single character had their own distinct voice, feelings, emotions, aspirations. The whole time I was just like, I want all of you guys to just be happy and succeed and do your part in this prophecy, and just like, I just want things to go well. And it was a disaster. This book, like, not the book was a disaster, like the whole the whole thing, but like in a great way. Like the writing just made me feel like, oh my gosh, I need more. And I'm so excited to read the second book this year because I just feel like it's going to exceed my expectations, because I've seen so many people say that the second book is even better than the first book, and the first book was just a 5-star read for me. So that's going to be saying a lot. But I just feel like this book is just so good. And I remember when I was starting to read it, I had looked up reviews and so many people were like, oh, this feels like Six of Crows. And I'm like, you should definitely read it because it's a really good book. The next book on my list is Know My Name. This is a memoir by Chanel Miller, who was the Stanford assault victim, and this book follows her experiences right before the assault, during the assault, and the trial and everything that happened, and then a little bit after the trial and everything went down. This book is one that I felt like, honestly, I have never felt this angry reading a book in my entire life. I feel like this is a type of book that you really have to go into knowing that there are a lot of trigger warnings, because this is, you know, a memoir. It's a real life recounting of something that was so horribly done to someone and their experiences afterwards. I just feel like this book makes me, on one hand, hate the world, but on the other hand, feel like there's hope, because then seeing how Chanel is now and the experiences she's had after that and seeing her growth. Chanel Miller is somebody who I respect so much. Like, I respect her so much. Her writing, the way she writes is just so wonderful, and it does feel really sucky that she went through this experience and that was what made her write a book. But I'm excited to see what she writes in future, because I know that she has expressed writing things in future, so I'm really excited to read more of the things that she writes. But I just had to put this book on this list because it was just such an amazing book and such an amazing read, and it just really will make you cry and be angry. So read at your own safety. But yeah, just one of the best books ever. The last and final book on this list is a book that might be surprising to be on this list because I haven't talked about it really since reading it. This book is Catherine House, and it follows our main character who is basically running away from some things that she's done in the past, and so she ends up deciding to accept an offer or go to this school called Catherine House, where you basically have to promise to give away your life for 3 years. You can't contact anyone on the outside. You have to live, breathe, whatever, Catherine House. It is your all. This book is so creepy, okay? It is so creepy because while you're at Catherine House with the characters, you start to feel like you're physically there. Like, I don't know how to explain that, but as you're following our main character and all the people she interacts with, you feel like you're physically at the school. There's a way that she changes in her mindset and in the way she sees things and in the way she responds to things. And at the same time, while you're reading it, you start to change your own thoughts and your own feelings and the way you react to those things. And then there's the chanting, and the whole time I was like, what's going on here? I'm scared. And that's just how good the author's writing is. That's just how good the writing in this book is, okay? It is flawlessly done. When I tell you that I was starting to feel so creeped out, I was starting to second guess things. I was starting to be like, okay, did anybody notice that? Did anybody notice that? Did anybody see that person acting like that? And I was like, what's going on here? Literally, that's how I would describe this book. What's going on here? But you need to read it because it's really good. And the ending, you're either gonna love or hate this book. Like, honestly, you're either gonna love or hate this book. I feel like I don't really see anybody being like a 3-star on this. Like, you're either gonna be like, I wasted my time, or you're gonna be like, this was phenomenal. And I was like, this was phenomenal. But it's a great book. I think you should read it. It's definitely one of my favorites from this year because the writing was just so phenomenal. Like, I have never read something that really made me question my own sanity. This is the one. This is the book. Amazing. But yeah, those are all my favorite books from 2020. I feel like, again, I just had such a great reading year. Didn't really have that many things I hated. Yeah, okay, so that is the video. Thank you so much again to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. If you watched the whole video, go ahead and leave me a black heart because I just feel like the look today is very black and white, and I love that. So send me a black heart, oh, or a white heart. Black or white, black and white. Do what you want to do with that. But thanks again so much for watching this video. I will see you all in the next one. Bye!